In a week, I'd be king. I just didn't know my queen was plotting regicide. My name is Simon Drake, and I've spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder at Meridian Industries like a man possessed. At 41, I'd finally reached the summit. Harold Klein, our aging CEO, had privately informed me that next Friday's board meeting would make it official. The corner office, the executive parking spot, the seven-figure salary, all mine. "You've earned this, Simon," Harold had said, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the Chicago skyline. "You've been the backbone of this company's operations division. It's time you got the recognition you deserve." Recognition. That's all I'd ever wanted. Growing up as the scholarship kid at prep school, then the state university graduate in a room full of Ivy Leaguers, I'd learned to fight for every scrap of respect. My wife, Elise, understood that hunger. She'd climbed her own ladder to head our digital marketing division, and we'd been the power couple everyone whispered about in the break room. Or so I thought. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a Tuesday morning. I decided to surprise Elise with coffee from that overpriced place she loved, thinking we could celebrate my upcoming promotion together. Her office was on the 32nd floor, 2 levels below mine, with a view that cost the company extra but kept our marketing queen happy. I knocked on her door frame, balancing 2 steaming cups. Room service for the most beautiful executive in the building. Elise looked up from her laptop, and I noticed immediately her wedding ring was missing. The platinum band with the princess-cut diamond I'd saved 6 months to afford sat nowhere on her manicured fingers. "Simon." Her voice carried an edge I'd never heard before, sharp enough to cut glass. "What are you doing here?" Bringing my wife coffee. I set the cups on her desk, fighting the urge to ask about the ring. Thought we could talk about dinner plans. Maybe celebrate a little early. I'm in the middle of a campaign review. She gestured vaguely at her screen without looking at me. "We can't be seen having personal conversations during work hours. It looks unprofessional." Unprofessional. We'd been married for 8 years, together for 10. We'd started dating when she was a junior marketing associate and I was a mid-level operations manager. Half the company knew our story. "Since when do you care about appearances?" I forced a laugh. "Remember when you used to sneak into my office during lunch breaks?" Her cheeks flushed, but not with the fond embarrassment I expected. That was different. We weren't department heads then. Right. I picked up my coffee, leaving hers untouched. "Well, enjoy your campaign review." I made it halfway to the elevator before the humiliation hit me like a freight train. Elise had never, not once in our entire relationship, pushed me away like that. We'd always been a team, partners in everything from weekend grocery shopping to quarterly budget meetings. That evening, she apologized over takeout Chinese food in our Lincoln Park condo. "I'm sorry about today," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I've been stressed about the Morrison account. You know how demanding those pharmaceutical clients can be." I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. "Where's your ring?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. She glanced down at her bare finger, then back at her lo mein. "I took it to the jeweler. One of the prongs was loose. Should have it back Friday." Plausible. Reasonable. Except Elise had never taken that ring off. Not even when she broke her wrist skiing in Aspen 2 years ago. "Maybe after I get the CEO announcement, we could start trying for kids," I said, testing the waters. "We've talked about it before." Something flickered across her face. Panic? Disgust? It was gone too quickly to identify. "Let's see how the promotion goes first," she said. "Big changes coming." Big changes. She had no idea. The next morning, I made a decision that would alter the trajectory of my life. Instead of heading straight to my office, I took a detour past the marketing department. Call it intuition, call it paranoia. I needed to know what was happening to my marriage. I grabbed Frank Morrison, our IT director and my closest friend at the company, for an early coffee. "You look like hell," Frank said, stirring sugar into his espresso. At 55, he had the cynical wisdom of a man who'd seen 3 CEOs come and go. "What's eating you?" "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone wanted to monitor network activity for a specific user, how would they go about it?" Frank's eyebrows shot up. "Hypothetically, that someone would need administrative access and a damn good reason. We talking corporate espionage or marital problems?" "Doesn't matter?" "Simon." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Whatever's going on with Elise, spying on her company email isn't the answer. Who said anything about Elise? Frank gave me a look that said he wasn't born yesterday. I've been watching office politics longer than you've been married. Well, my advice: talk to your wife before you do something stupid. But talking wasn't an option anymore. Not when every conversation felt like navigating a minefield. That afternoon, I positioned myself at the coffee station near the marketing department during the usual 3 p.m. gossip session. Mara Chun and Tasha Williams, Elise's closest work friends, were discussing weekend plans and voices that carried farther than they realized. "Did you see her Friday night?" Mara was saying. Girl was practically glowing. Must have been some conference. "Conference my buttocks," Tasha laughed. "That was post-sex glow if I ever saw it. And since Simon was at his mother's birthday party." My blood turned to ice water. "Think she's finally going to leave him?" Mara asked. "Depends on how Friday goes. If Nathan gets the promotion instead of Simon, she won't have to choose between them anymore." Nathan Locke, head of our sales division, 43 years old, divorced with the kind of easy charm that made clients sign contracts and apparently made wives forget their wedding vows. Nathan Locke, who I just learned was the other candidate for CEO. I stood there, coffee mug trembling in my hands, as the pieces of my life rearranged themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was hedging her bets. If Nathan got the promotion, she'd leave me for him. If I got it, she'd stay for the money and status. Either way, I was nothing more than a chess piece in someone else's game. That's when I saw them. I was walking toward the lobby elevators, mind reeling from what I'd overheard when I spotted Elise and Nathan by the security desk. They thought they were hidden behind a decorative pillar, but I had a clear view from the mezzanine level. Nathan's hand was on her thigh, fingers splayed possessively over the fabric of her pencil skirt. Elise was leaning into him, her face tilted up toward his. And when he kissed her, she melted against him like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Bold, public, shameless. I pulled out my phone and took 3 pictures before they separated. Nathan whispered something in her ear that made her laugh, a genuine, delighted sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months. As I watched my wife straighten Nathan's tie with intimate familiarity, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. If they wanted to play the king's game, I'd show them how a real king handled traitors. Turns out, the king's seat comes with a deceived partner's crown. I made it home that night on pure autopilot, my mind replaying the lobby scene like a broken record. Elise arrived an hour later, humming some pop song under her breath as she kicked off her heels. "Good day," I asked from the kitchen, where I was nursing my 3rd beer and staring at the photos on my phone. "Productive." She opened the refrigerator, scanning the contents. Nathan closed the Henderson deal. "We're celebrating tomorrow night at that new steakhouse downtown." The casual way she said his name made my stomach churn. Nathan, like he was just another colleague instead of the man whose tongue had been down her throat 6 hours earlier. "Celebrating, huh?" I kept my voice level. "Will spouses be invited?" She paused, a bottle of white wine halfway to the counter. "It's a work thing, Simon. You'd be bored. I might surprise you." I find Nathan's sales techniques fascinating. Something shifted in her expression. A micro tell I'd learned to read during contract negotiations. Guilt, maybe? Or fear of being caught. Actually, I think it's just the sales team. You know how they get when they're talking numbers. Line number 2. Or was it 3? I'd lost count. Right. Well, don't let me keep you from your work relationships. She studied my face for a moment, those green eyes I'd once loved searching for something. Then she smiled, the same practiced expression she used on difficult clients. "You've been acting strange lately. Everything okay? Just thinking about the promotion. Big changes coming, like you said. I'm sure you'll handle whatever comes your way." She kissed my cheek, a brief, perfunctory peck that felt like a business handshake. "I'm going to take a bath." As she headed toward our bedroom, I noticed she was carrying her phone. Elise never took her phone to the bath. She used to joke that it was her sacred technology-free zone. Apparently, Nathan was worth breaking sacred traditions. The next morning, I arrived at the office early and went straight to Frank's domain in the IT department. He looked up from a tangle of Ethernet cables, coffee-stained polo shirt already wrinkled despite the early hour. "You look worse than yesterday," he observed. "Please tell me you didn't do anything stupid." Define stupid. "Simon." I pulled out my phone and showed him the lobby photos. Frank's expression went from concern to sympathy to anger in about 3 seconds. "Son of an unpleasant person," he muttered. "How long has this been going on?" "No idea. But I need to find out." I pocketed the phone. "Can you help me or not?" Frank was quiet for a long moment, weighing IT ethics against 15 years of friendship. Friendship 1. "There's a guest network for client meetings," he said finally. "Less secure than our main system. If someone were to connect their personal devices to it, hypothetically, that traffic might be easier to monitor. Hypothetically. And if that someone were conducting personal business on company property during company time, well," he shrugged, "that's a violation of our acceptable use policy." Within an hour, Frank had set up monitoring software that would track any device connected to the guest network. All I had to do was wait for Elise and Nathan to slip up. I didn't have to wait long. Thursday afternoon, I was pretending to review quarterly reports when Frank's encrypted message appeared on my screen. "Birds are singing in conference room C." Conference room C was supposedly booked for a digital marketing strategy session from 2 to 4 p.m. I made my way to the 31st floor, where the room sat at the end of a rarely used corridor. The door was closed, but voices carried through the thin walls. I pressed my ear against the cool wood, feeling like a teenager eavesdropping on his parents. "Told you he doesn't suspect anything." Elise's voice, slightly breathless. "You sure about that? He's been asking questions about the promotion timeline." Nathan's tone was confident, predatory. "Maybe we should cool it until after Friday." "Why?" "In a week it won't matter what he thinks." My heart stopped. "You really think Klein will choose me over Simon?" Nathan asked. "Harold's old school. He likes the sales numbers, and your Q3 performance was impressive. Plus, Simon's been distracted lately. Making mistakes." "What mistakes?" "I've been meticulous about every project, every presentation. And if Klein chooses him anyway, then we stick to the original plan. I file for divorce, take half of everything, and we start fresh. Either way, I get what I want." "What we want," Nathan corrected. "Of course. What we want." There was a rustling sound, then Elise's soft laugh. "We should get back. People will notice if we're both gone too long." "Let them notice. After Friday, we won't have to sneak around anymore." I managed to duck into a supply closet before they emerged from the conference room. Through the crack in the door, I watched Nathan adjust his tie while Elise smoothed her hair. It looked like they'd been doing more than discussing marketing strategies. As they walked toward the elevators, Nathan's hand found the small of Elise's back, a possessive gesture that made my vision blur with rage. That evening, I sat in my home office, staring at a legal pad covered with notes. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. Elise wasn't just cheating. She was actively sabotaging my career. The mistakes she mentioned to Nathan were probably her doing. A misplaced email here, a delayed report there, small things that would make me look incompetent to the board. She was playing both sides, ensuring she'd come out ahead regardless of who got the promotion. If Nathan won, she'd leave me and start fresh with a new CEO. If I won, she'd divorce me and take half of my increased salary and benefits. It was brilliant in a sociopathic sort of way. I opened my laptop and started researching Illinois divorce law. Community property, asset division, alimony calculations, all the cheerful topics that would define my immediate future. Then, I remembered something that made me smile for the first time in days. Our prenuptial agreement. Elise had insisted on it when we got engaged, claiming it was just a formality to protect both our careers. I'd been hurt at the time. What kind of bride-to-be plans for divorce before the wedding? But I'd signed it to make her happy. The agreement had a very specific clause about infidelity. If either party could prove cheating, the cheating spouse forfeited their claim to the other's assets, including future earnings. At the time, it had seemed like an archaic provision, something our lawyer had included out of habit. Now it looked like a lifeline. I pulled the document from our home safe and read it carefully. The language was clear. Photographic evidence, electronic communications, or witness testimony would be sufficient proof of cheating. I had photographs. Frank's network monitoring would provide electronic communications. And I was willing to bet that Mara and Tasha knew more than they'd admitted during their coffee break gossip session. Elise thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. She had no idea I'd been studying the board this whole time, learning her strategies, anticipating her moves. Friday was 2 days away. The board meeting that would determine my professional future, and the moment when Elise would make her choice between Nathan and me. But she'd already made that choice in conference room C. She'd chosen herself, and she'd chosen wrong. As I sat there in the growing darkness, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but they were being overshadowed by something colder, more calculating. If Elise wanted to play games with my life, she was about to learn that I'd been an underdog long enough to know how underdogs win. They don't play fair. If they want a king's game, I'll play it bloody. Friday morning arrived with the kind of gray Chicago drizzle that made everything look like a noir film. Perfect weather for corporate warfare. I'd spent Thursday night preparing for battle. 3 hours of research had given me a complete dossier on Nathan Locke's professional history, and what I'd found was fascinating. Nathan had been married to Rebecca Steinberg, daughter of a major pharmaceutical executive, until their messy divorce 2 years ago. The court records were public, and they painted a picture of a man who'd used his wife's family connections to advance his career, then discarded her when he'd climbed high enough to no longer need the help. Sound familiar? More interesting was his expense report history. Frank had helped me access 3 years of corporate spending data, and Nathan's client entertainment budget told quite a story. Expensive dinners, luxury hotel stays, weekend trips to wine country. All supposedly business-related, but the timing was suspicious. Several of these expenses coincided with periods when Elise had claimed to be at marketing conferences or visiting her sister in Milwaukee. I cross-referenced the dates with her social media posts and found gaps. Times when she'd gone completely silent online, unusual for someone who normally documented every meal and sunset. But the real smoking firearm was hidden in Nathan's office computer. Thursday evening, after most of the staff had gone home, Frank and I had paid a visit to the 34th floor. Nathan's password protection was laughably weak, his ex-wife's birthday, which I'd found in the divorce records. "This is highly illegal," Frank had muttered as he bypassed the login screen. "So, is embezzlement," I'd replied, because that's exactly what we'd found. Nathan had been skimming money from his entertainment budget for months, using corporate credit cards to pay for personal expenses. Hotel rooms that weren't for client meetings, restaurant bills for romantic dinners, even a weekend trip to Napa Valley that coincided perfectly with one of Elise's mysterious disappearances. The total was nearly $30,000. Not enough to destroy the company, but more than enough to destroy Nathan's career and reputation. I'd copied everything to a secure drive, along with the network logs Frank had collected showing Nathan and Elise's personal communications on company equipment. The evidence painted a clear picture of two people conducting an affair on corporate time and corporate dime. Now, as I sat in my office reviewing the morning's agenda, I felt like a general preparing for the final battle. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Harold would announce his successor, and my life would change forever, one way or another. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Good luck today. I know you'll do great." The casual hypocrisy of it made my jaw clench. She was probably sending similar encouragement to Nathan, hedging her bets until the very last moment. I texted back, "Thanks. Looking forward to celebrating tonight." Let her wonder what I meant by that. At 11 a.m., I made my first move. I called Mara Chun and asked her to meet me in the lobby cafe for coffee. She arrived looking curious and slightly nervous. Junior employees don't usually get personal invitations from VPs. "Thanks for meeting with me," I said, gesturing for her to sit across from me at a corner table. "I wanted to ask you about something, and I need you to be completely honest." Mara's eyes widened. "Is this about my performance review? Because I know I've been a little distracted lately, but it's about Elise." Her face went pale. "What about her?" I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the lobby photos. Not the kiss, just Nathan and Elise standing closer than colleagues should. "How long has this been going on?" Mara stared at the image, her coffee growing cold between her hands. Simon, I can't. Mara. I leaned forward, using the same tone that closed million-dollar deals. My wife is cheating on me with a man who's stealing from the company. I have evidence of both. The only question is whether you want to be on the right side of this when it all comes out. She was quiet for a long moment, weighing loyalty against self-preservation. Self-preservation won. 3 months, she whispered. Maybe 4. It started during the Morrison campaign when they were working late together. What do you know about their plans? Elise thinks Nathan's going to get the promotion. She's been preparing for that outcome. Preparing how? Mara looked around the cafe, making sure no one was listening. She's been talking about making a fresh start. New job, new life. She said some opportunities were too good to pass up. And if Nathan doesn't get the promotion, then she'll figure out another way to get what she wants. Elise always lands on her feet. I thanked Mara and sent her back to work with a warning to keep our conversation confidential. She nodded eagerly, probably already composing her resume in case she needed to find a new job quickly. One witness secured. Now for the main event. At 1:45 p.m., I walked into the boardroom carrying a leather portfolio that contained my professional future. The 12 board members were already seated around the mahogany table, their faces giving nothing away. Harold sat at the head of the table, looking every one of his 68 years. Nathan arrived 2 minutes later, flashing his trademark confident smile. He nodded at me cordially, the picture of professional courtesy. If I hadn't seen him with his hands all over my wife, I might have believed the act. Gentlemen, Harold began, we're here to discuss the succession plan for Meridian Industries. Both candidates have served this company with distinction, and this wasn't an easy decision. My heart hammered against my ribs. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, came down to the next 60 seconds. After careful consideration of performance metrics, leadership capabilities, and strategic vision, the board has chosen Simon Drake as the next chief executive officer of Meridian Industries. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd won. After 15 years of fighting for respect, of being the underdog, of proving myself over and over again, I'd finally reached the summit. But the victory felt hollow. What good was being king if your queen was plotting your assassination? Nathan's smile never wavered, but I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Disappointment? Anger? Maybe even panic. He stood and shook my hand with apparent good grace. Congratulations, Simon. Well deserved. Thank you, Nathan. I'm looking forward to working with you in the transition. If only he knew there wouldn't be a transition. Not for him. The meeting concluded with handshakes and congratulations. I was officially CEO-elect, with the position becoming effective the following Monday. Harold pulled me aside as the board members filed out. You've earned this, son, he said, gripping my shoulder. I know you'll do right by this company. I won't let you down, Harold. I know you won't. Now go celebrate with that beautiful wife of yours. If only he knew what my beautiful wife was really celebrating. I returned to my office to find 3 voicemails from Elise, each one more excited than the last. The final message made my stomach turn. I'm so proud of you, baby. I knew you'd win. I can't wait to celebrate properly tonight. Properly, right? My computer chimed with an instant message from Frank. Congratulations, boss. What's the next move? I typed back. Time to take out the trash. At 4 p.m., I walked down to Nathan's office. He was packing up for the weekend, probably planning to meet Elise somewhere for a pity party about his lost promotion. Got a minute? I asked, closing the door behind me. Of course. What can I do for the new CEO? I sat down across from his desk and pulled out a manila folder. We need to discuss your expense reports. Nathan's confident expression flickered. My expense reports? Specifically, your creative interpretation of client entertainment. I opened the folder and spread out printed copies of his fraudulent expenses. $30,000 over 6 months. That's quite a lot of client entertainment. The color drained from Nathan's face as he recognized the documents. Simon, I can explain. I'm sure you can. I'm particularly interested in this weekend trip to Napa Valley. Which client were you entertaining? Because according to your calendar, you were supposed to be visiting your mother in Phoenix that weekend. Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. How did you get access to your computer? Your expense reports? Your calendar. I smiled coldly. I'm the CEO now, Nathan. There's very little in this company that I can't access. This is about Elise, isn't it? The words came out in a rush, desperation overriding caution. Look, Simon, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I pulled out my phone and showed him the lobby photos. You've been screwing my wife and stealing from my company. The only question is what I'm going to do about it. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the fight going out of him. What do you want? Your resignation. Effective immediately. You can cite personal reasons, family obligations, whatever helps you sleep at night. But you're done here. And if I refuse, then I send these expense reports to the board, along with evidence of your affair with a fellow executive. Corporate policy is very clear about relationships between department heads, especially when they involve misuse of company resources. Nathan stared at the photos for a long moment. She said, you didn't know. Elise says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. She loves me, Simon. This isn't just some fling. The pathetic hopelessness in his voice almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. Nathan, let me explain something about my wife. Elise doesn't love anyone except herself. You're just a stepping stone, same as I was. The only difference is that I figured it out before she could destroy me completely. I stood up and straightened my tie. I want your resignation letter on my desk by Monday morning. Clean out your office this weekend. Security will escort you out if you're still here Tuesday. You can't do this. I'm the CEO. I can do whatever I want. As I walked toward the door, Nathan called after me. What about Elise? Are you going to tell her? I turned back, smiling the same cold smile I'd perfected during 15 years of corporate warfare. Oh, Nathan, I'm not going to tell her anything. I'm going to show her. The company's annual anniversary gala was scheduled for Saturday night at the Palmer House Hotel, a glittering celebration of Meridian Industries' 35 years in business. Black tie, open bar, and 200 of Chicago's business elite mingling in the Empire Room while a jazz quartet played in the background. Perfect venue for a public execution. I'd spent Friday evening and Saturday morning preparing for war. The evidence against Nathan and Elise was organized into neat folders, copies stored in multiple locations. Frank had helped me set up a secure cloud server with everything: photos, expense reports, network logs, witness statements from Mara, and 2 other marketing employees who'd finally agreed to go on record about what they'd observed. But evidence was just ammunition. Tonight was about strategy. I arrived at the Palmer House at 7 p.m. sharp, wearing my best tuxedo and the platinum cufflinks Elise had given me for our 5th anniversary. She was already there, stunning in a black evening gown that hugged her curves and drew appreciative glances from half the men in the room. There's my CEO, she purred, kissing my cheek with practiced affection. You look incredible. So do you. I'm in it. Even knowing what I knew, even planning what I was planning, I couldn't deny that Elise was beautiful. It was part of what made her so dangerous. I'm so proud of you, she continued, straightening my bow tie with intimate familiarity. We should talk about the future. There are going to be changes, opportunities we need to discuss. I'm looking forward to it. Nathan arrived 20 minutes later, looking like a man attending his own funeral. He'd cleaned up well, expensive tuxedo, fresh haircut, confident smile for the cameras, but I could see the stress in the tight lines around his eyes. He made his way through the crowd, accepting condolences on missing the promotion with apparent good grace. Several people mentioned how well he was taking the disappointment, what a team player he was being. If only they knew he wouldn't be on the team much longer. The first part of my plan went into motion at 8:30 during the cocktail hour. I'd arranged for Harold to make a brief speech about leadership transitions, and I was invited to say a few words about my vision for the company's future. Ladies and gentlemen, Harold began, tapping his champagne flute with a butter knife. If I could have your attention for just a moment. The crowd quieted, turning toward the small stage where Harold stood with a microphone. I positioned myself near the back of the room with a clear view of both Elise and Nathan. 35 years ago, I founded Meridian Industries with a simple vision, Harold continued. Build a company based on integrity, innovation, and mutual respect. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that vision will continue under new leadership. Polite applause rippled through the room. Elise beamed at me from across the crowd, raising her champagne glass in a private toast. Simon Drake has been with us for 15 years, Harold said, gesturing for me to join him on stage. He's exemplified everything we value at Meridian: honesty, dedication, and unwavering commitment to excellence. More applause, louder this time. I made my way to the stage, shaking hands and accepting congratulations along the way. Thank you, Harold, I said, taking the microphone. And thank you all for being here tonight. Meridian Industries has always been more than just a company. It's been a family. And like any family, we protect each other, we support each other, and we hold each other accountable. I paused, letting my eyes sweep across the crowd until they found Nathan. He was standing near the bar, champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. In the coming weeks, we'll be making some changes to ensure that Meridian continues to operate with the highest standards of professional conduct and ethical behavior. Because integrity isn't just a buzzword. It's the foundation of everything we do. The applause was enthusiastic, but I noticed Nathan had gone pale. He knew I wasn't just talking about general corporate philosophy. I returned the microphone to Harold and stepped down from the stage, accepting handshakes and congratulations as I made my way back into the crowd. Elise appeared at my side immediately, slipping her arm through mine. "Wonderful speech," she said. "Very inspiring. Just getting started." At 9:15, I excused myself to use the restroom. Nathan followed me, just as I'd expected he would. The men's room was empty, except for an elderly board member washing his hands at the sink. I waited until we were alone. "Nice speech," Nathan said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Very subtle." "I thought so. You're really going to do this? Destroy my career over a woman who doesn't even love you anymore?" I turned to face him fully, noting how the stress had aged him in just 24 hours. "This isn't about Elise, Nathan. This is about $30,000 in fraudulent expense reports and a pattern of unethical behavior that makes you unfit to work at this company." "Unethical behavior?" His voice rose. "You're the one spying on employees, hacking into computers. I'm the CEO. It's called oversight." Nathan stepped closer, his face flushed with anger and champagne. "You think you've won something? Elise is going to leave you anyway. She told me she was done with this marriage months ago. Then she's free to go, but she'll go with nothing. What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, enjoying the confusion in his eyes. "Ask her about our prenuptial agreement. Specifically, the infidelity clause." Nathan's face went white. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Before he could respond, the restroom door opened and Frank walked in, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but Harold's looking for both of you. Something about the quarterly sales presentation." Nathan brushed past me without another word, his shoulders rigid with fury. I followed more slowly, taking time to straighten my bow tie and check my appearance in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked like a CEO, confident, composed, in control. It was a good look. The quarterly presentation was a routine affair, department heads giving brief updates on performance metrics and upcoming projects. Nathan delivered his sales report with professional competence, but I could see the strain around his eyes. When it was Elise's turn to discuss the marketing department's achievements, she was flawless. Poised, articulate, charming. She had the entire room eating out of her hand as she outlined the successful Morrison campaign and projected growth for the next quarter. "Our team has been working closely with sales to identify new opportunities," she said, glancing briefly at Nathan. "The collaboration has been very productive." A few people chuckled at what they assumed was innocent corporate humor. If only they knew how productive that collaboration had really been. After the presentations, the party resumed with dinner and dancing. I made the rounds, playing the role of gracious CEO-elect, accepting congratulations and discussing business strategy with board members and major clients. But I was watching, always watching. Nathan and Elise were being careful, maintaining professional distance in public. But I caught the subtle signals, a lingering glance across the room, fingers brushing as they reached for the same champagne tray, the way Elise's eyes followed Nathan when she thought no one was looking. At 10:30, they made their mistake. I was talking with Harold and two board members near the hotel's grand staircase when I saw Nathan slip out of the ballroom. 30 seconds later, Elise excused herself from a conversation with some pharmaceutical executives and headed in the same direction. I waited 2 minutes, then followed. The Palmer House is a maze of elegant corridors and private meeting rooms, perfect for clandestine encounters. I found them in a small alcove near the hotel's business center, partially hidden behind a decorative pillar. Nathan had Elise pressed against the wall, one hand tangled in her hair, while the other traced the neckline of her evening gown. She was kissing him like a woman starved, all pretense of professional decorum abandoned. "We need to be more careful," she whispered against his lips. "Simon's been acting strange lately." "Forget Simon," Nathan replied. "After tonight, it won't matter what he thinks." "What do you mean?" Nathan pulled back slightly, his hand still on her waist. "I mean, I'm done playing games. I'm going to tell him about us. Tonight." Elise's eyes widened. "Not done. No. We agreed to wait until..." "Until what? Until he fires me?" "Because that's what's going to happen, Elise. He knows about the expense reports." "How could he know?" "He had evidence. Photos, financial records, everything." "I'm finished at Meridian." Elise was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Then we stick to the backup plan. I file for divorce. We start over somewhere else." "What about the prenup?" "What about it?" Nathan's expression was grim. "Simon mentioned an infidelity clause. Said you'd get nothing if he could prove cheating." I watched my wife's face cycle through surprise, anger, and calculation in the space of 3 seconds. Then she smiled, a cold, predatory expression I'd never seen before. "Simon's smarter than I gave him credit for," she said, "but not smart enough." "What do you mean?" "I mean, there are ways around prenuptial agreements. Coercion, inadequate legal representation, failure to disclose assets." I've been researching divorce law for months. Of course she had. Besides, Elise continued, he'd have to prove the affair in court. Photos can be explained away, and it's just your word against ours. Our word. You don't think I'm going to let you face this alone, do you? She kissed him again, softer this time. "We're in this together, Nathan. Whatever happens." I'd heard enough. More than enough. I pulled out my phone and started recording as I stepped out from behind the pillar. "What a touching scene," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet corridor. "Very romantic." They sprang apart like teenagers caught by their parents. Elise's face went through several shades of pale before settling on defiant. "Simon," she said, smoothing down her dress. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" "Because it looks like my wife is making out with my head of sales in a hotel corridor while discussing how to defraud me in our divorce proceedings." Nathan stepped forward, his jaw set. "Simon, we need to talk." "We already talked, Nathan. Remember? Yesterday? In your office? When I gave you until Monday to resign." Elise's head snapped toward Nathan. "You didn't tell me he fired you." "He didn't fire me. He blackmailed me." "Semantics," I said, still recording. "The end result is the same. You're done at Meridian, and now everyone's going to know why." "You can't use that recording," Elise said, her voice sharp with panic. "Illinois is a two-party consent state." "True, but we're not in Illinois right now, are we? We're in a hotel, which is private property, and I have every right to record conversations that involve my own marriage and my own company. Actually, I wasn't sure about the legality, but they didn't need to know that. Besides," I continued, "I don't need the recording for court. I have plenty of other evidence. This is just for my own entertainment." Nathan's face flushed red. "You son of an unpleasant person." "Careful, Nathan. We're still at a company function. Wouldn't want to make a scene." But Nathan was beyond caring about scenes. He lunged forward, grabbing for my phone with one hand while swinging at my face with the other. I'd been expecting something like this. 15 years of corporate politics had taught me to anticipate desperate moves from desperate people. I stepped back, letting Nathan's momentum carry him past me, then grabbed his arm and used his own weight to slam him into the wall. His phone clattered across the marble floor as he tried to regain his balance. "Nathan, stop," Elise hissed, looking around frantically to make sure no one had seen the scuffle. But Nathan was past listening. He came at me again, this time landing a glancing blow to my shoulder before I managed to grab him and spin him around, pressing his face against the decorative pillar. "You want to do this here?" I whispered in his ear. "In front of 200 witnesses? Because I'm happy to call security and have you arrested for attack." Nathan struggled for a moment longer, then went limp. "Let me go." I released him and stepped back, straightening my bow tie. Nathan's tuxedo was rumpled, his hair disheveled, and there was a small cut on his cheek from where he'd hit the pillar. "You look terrible," I observed. "Might want to clean up before you go back to the party." Elise was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Who are you?" "I'm your husband. The man you've been lying to, cheating on, and planning to destroy for the past 4 months." I pocketed my phone. "I'm also the CEO of this company, which means I get to decide who stays and who goes." "Simon, please," she said, her voice taking on the pleading tone she used when she wanted something. "Can we talk about this privately? There's so much you don't understand." "I understand plenty. I understand that you've been sleeping with Nathan while planning to divorce me. I understand that he's been stealing company money to pay for your romantic getaways. I understand that you've thought you could play both sides and come out ahead no matter what happened. It's not like that. It's exactly like that." I started walking back toward the ballroom, then paused and looked over my shoulder. "Oh, and Elise? You might want to call a lawyer. A good one. You're going to need it." Sunday morning arrived with the kind of brilliant sunshine that made Chicago's skyline gleam like polished steel. I was sitting on my condo's balcony, drinking coffee and reading the Tribune, when my phone started buzzing with text messages. The first was from Harold. "Heard there was some excitement at the gala last night. Call me." The second was from Frank. "Nathan's been trying to access his company email all night. Locked him out like you requested." The third was from my lawyer, David Brennan. "Got your message. Very interesting documents. Can you come in Monday morning?" The fourth was from Elise. "We need to talk." I deleted that one without responding. By noon, the gossip network at Meridian Industries was operating at full capacity. Frank called to give me updates every hour. "Mara's been fielding calls all morning," he reported. "Apparently half the party saw Nathan looking disheveled after your little conversation. People are asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that end careers. Word is getting out about his resignation." He submitted it, sent it to Harold's personal email at 6 a.m., cited personal reasons and new opportunities. Very professional, considering he was probably drunk when he wrote it. I wasn't surprised. Nathan was smart enough to know when he was beaten. "What about Elise?" "Radio silence from the marketing department. She called in sick today." "Called in sick? On a Sunday?" That was rich. I spent the rest of the day preparing for the week ahead. Monday would bring the official announcement of my promotion, along with Nathan's departure. The timing would raise eyebrows, but corporate America was used to sudden personnel changes. People would speculate for a few days, then move on to the next piece of office gossip. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Monday morning, I arrived at Meridian Industries at 7 a.m., 2 hours before most of the staff. The building felt different somehow. Maybe because I was seeing it through a CEO's eyes, or maybe because I was about to burn down everything I'd spent 15 years building. Harold was waiting in his office with coffee and a grim expression. "Want to tell me what happened Saturday night?" he asked without preamble. I sat down across from his desk and pulled out a manila folder. "Nathan Locke has been embezzling company funds and conducting an extramarital affair with another executive. I have documentation." Harold's eyebrows shot up. "That's a serious accusation, Simon." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." I spread out the evidence. Expense reports, hotel receipts, network logs, photographs. Harold studied everything carefully, his expression growing darker with each document. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 4 months, possibly longer. The financial irregularities go back 6 months. And the affair is with my wife." Harold's head snapped up. "Elise?" "Elise." He was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "Simon, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Neither did I until last week. What do you want to do about this?" Nathan's already resigned. As for Elise, I paused, choosing my words carefully. I think it would be best if she found opportunities elsewhere. Harold nodded slowly. I can't fire her for having an affair. But if she was involved in the financial irregularities, she wasn't, at least not directly. But her position here is going to be untenable once word gets out about Nathan. Word's already getting out. I've had 3 calls this morning asking about Nathan's sudden departure. Then we control the narrative. Nathan resigned to pursue other opportunities. No mention of the embezzlement unless someone asks directly. As for Elise, we offer her a generous severance package in exchange for her resignation. And if she refuses? I smiled coldly. She won't refuse. At 9 a.m., I called Elise into my office. She arrived looking like she hadn't slept, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes, hair not quite as polished as usual. "You wanted to see me?" she said, closing the door behind her. "Sit down." She remained standing. "I prefer to stand." "Seat. Down." Something in my voice made her comply. She perched on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight. I opened a folder on my desk and pulled out a document. Resignation letter. Effective immediately. We're prepared to offer you 6 months severance and a positive reference. Elise stared at the paper without touching it. "You can't fire me for having an affair." "I'm not firing you. I'm offering you a graceful exit before this situation becomes even messier." "What situation?" "You have photos of Nathan and me talking. That's not grounds for termination." I pulled out my phone and played the recording from Saturday night, her voice clearly discussing ways to circumvent our prenuptial agreement. Her face went white. "You can't use that in court." "Maybe not in court, but I can certainly share it with the board, with HR, with anyone who's interested in your professional ethics." "That's blackmail. That's business." Elise was quiet for a moment, staring at the resignation letter. "What about Nathan?" "Nathan's gone. Submitted his resignation yesterday morning." "Gone where?" "Not my problem anymore." She looked up at me then, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine emotion. Regret, maybe, or sadness for what we'd lost. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she said quietly. "How was it supposed to happen, Elise? You sleep with my competitor while sabotaging my career, then divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for." "I never sabotaged your career." "No?" "Then explain the mistakes you mentioned to Nathan. The ones that were supposed to make me look incompetent to the board." Her silence was answer enough. "Sign the letter," I said. "Take the severance. Move on with your life. And if I don't," I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "Then I release everything to the press. Photos, recordings, financial documents. Meridian Industries CEO's wife caught in embezzlement scandal with sales executive. Your name will be in every business publication in Chicago. You wouldn't. Try me." She picked up the pen with shaking hands and signed her name at the bottom of the resignation letter. Her signature looked different, smaller, less confident than the bold flourish I remembered from our marriage certificate. "There," she said, dropping the pen. "Happy now." Ecstatic. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Simon, I did love you once. Once isn't enough." After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the Chicago skyline. I'd won. Nathan was gone, Elise was gone, and I was CEO of a major corporation. Everything I'd worked for, everything I dreamed of, was finally mine. So why did I feel so empty? The answer came to me as I watched the morning traffic crawl along Lakeshore Drive. Victory without honor wasn't really victory at all. It was just another kind of defeat. But it was too late for philosophy. The game was in motion, and there was still one more move to make. I picked up my phone and called David Brennan. "David, it's Simon. I need you to file the divorce papers today." "Today? Don't you want to think about this a little longer?" "I've been thinking about it for a week. I want her served at home, not at the office. She won't be working here anymore." "Understood. What about settlement negotiations?" "No negociations. The prenup stands. She gets nothing." "Simon, even with evidence of cheating, she might be able to challenge." "Let her try. I have enough evidence to bury her in court." After I hung up, I called Frank and asked him to come to my office. He arrived 5 minutes later, looking curious and slightly worried. How does it feel to be working for the new boss? I asked. Same as working for the old boss. Except now I know where the bodies are buried. I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Speaking of bodies, I need you to do one more thing for me. What's that? Change all the security codes. I don't want Nathan or Elise getting back into the building. Already done. Changed them yesterday after Nathan's resignation went through. What about their company equipment? Laptops, phones. Remotely wiped Saturday night. They're clean. Frank had always been thorough. It's why I'd kept him around for 15 years. Good. Now I need you to prepare a report for the board about the financial irregularities in the sales department. Nothing that mentions Nathan by name, but enough detail to justify increased oversight. You really want to salt the earth, don't you? I want to make sure this never happens again. Frank nodded and headed for the door, then paused. Simon, for what it's worth, you did the right thing. Did I? They were stealing from the company and lying to your face. What else were you supposed to do? After he left, I turned back to the window and watched the city wake up below me. Somewhere out there, Nathan was probably packing his apartment, trying to figure out how to explain his sudden unemployment to friends and family. Somewhere else, Elise was probably calling lawyers, looking for ways to challenge the prenup and salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. But I was here, in the corner office, master of everything I surveyed, king of the mountain. So why did it feel so much like standing on a pile of ashes? Tuesday morning brought the kind of bitter wind that made Chicago feel like the edge of the world. I was in my office by 6 a.m., going through the final preparations for the board's emergency meeting. Word had leaked about Nathan's resignation and Elise's departure, and the board wanted answers. I was ready to give them answers, just not the ones they expected. At 8 a.m., my assistant knocked on my door. Mr. Drake, there's a woman here to see you. Says it's urgent. I'm not taking visitors today. She says she's Rebecca Steinberg, Nathan Locke's ex-wife. That got my attention. I told my assistant to send her in. Rebecca Steinberg was nothing like I'd expected. Mid-30s, auburn hair, expensive suit that screamed corporate lawyer. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd survived a brutal divorce and come out stronger. Mr. Drake, she said, extending a manicured hand. Thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Miss Steinberg? It's about my ex-husband. I understand he's no longer with your company. That's correct. She sat down without being invited, crossing her legs and studying me with intelligent brown eyes. I also understand there were some financial irregularities involved in his departure. I kept my expression neutral. I can't discuss personnel matters. Of course not. But I can discuss my own experiences with Nathan's creative approach to expense management. Now, she had my full attention. During our divorce proceedings, Rebecca continued, my forensic accountant discovered that Nathan had been skimming money from his previous employer's entertainment budget. Small amounts spread over time. Very difficult to detect unless you knew what to look for. Why are you telling me this? Because Nathan Locke is an aggressor. He targets successful women, uses them to advance his career, then discards them when they're no longer useful. I'd hate to see another woman go through what I experienced. Another woman? Rebecca smiled grimly. Your wife, Mr. Drake. I've been watching Nathan's social media activity since our divorce. He's been very careful, but not careful enough. I know about their affair. I leaned back in my chair, reassessing the woman across from me. What do you want? Justice. Nathan destroyed my career, my reputation, and my family. When he left me, he took half of everything I'd worked for, plus alimony that I'll be paying for the next 5 years. And now I want to make sure he doesn't do it to anyone else. Rebecca reached in her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. This contains documentation of Nathan's pattern of financial fraud going back 7 years. 3 different companies. Same methods, same results. He's never been prosecuted because the amounts were relatively small and the companies didn't want the publicity. I opened the folder and scanned the contents. Bank records, expense reports, email correspondence, all pointing to a systematic pattern of embezzlement. This is impressive work, I said. I'm a corporate attorney, Mr. Drake. I know how to build a case. What do you want to do with this? File charges. Make it public. Ensure that Nathan Locke never works in corporate America again. I closed the folder and studied Rebecca's face. What's in it for you? Closure, and the satisfaction of knowing that my ex-husband will finally face consequences for his actions. What about Elise? Rebecca's expression softened slightly. Your wife is a sufferer, Mr. Drake. Nathan is very good at manipulation and making women feel special and desired. I don't blame her for falling for his act, even though she was married, especially because she was married. Nathan targets women in committed relationships because they're more vulnerable to his particular brand of attention. I thought about that for a moment. It was a generous interpretation of Elise's behavior, more generous than she deserved. I'll consider your proposal, I said finally. Thank you. That's all I asked. After Rebecca left, I sat alone with her folder, thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between them. What I'd done to Nathan and Elise felt personal, driven by hurt and anger. What Rebecca was proposing felt like something larger, a way to prevent future suffers. My phone buzzed with a text from David Brennan. Elise wants to meet. Says she has information you need to hear. I texted back. Not interested. She says it's about Nathan and criminal activity. Might be worth listening. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Elise at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Neutral territory where we couldn't make a scene. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a latte like it was an anchor. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down across from her. You have 5 minutes. Nathan's been stealing from the company for months. More than you know. I know about the $30,000 in fraudulent expenses. It's not $30,000, Simon. It's closer to $150,000. That got my attention. Explain. Elise pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots. Bank statements, wire transfers, credit card receipts, all in Nathan's name. He's been running multiple schemes, she said. The expense reports were just the obvious one. He's also been taking kickbacks from vendors, inflating contract values, even skimming cash from client entertainment events. I studied the evidence, my anger building with each document. How would you know about this? Because he told me. He was bragging about how clever he was, how he'd been getting away with it for years. And you said nothing. Elise's cheeks flushed. I was in love with him, Simon. I thought we were going to be together. I didn't want to hurt his career. But now you do. Now I realize what kind of man he really is. When you fired him, he blamed me. Said it was my fault for being careless, for letting you find out about us. Then he disappeared. Left town. Cleaned out his apartment. Closed his bank accounts. Gone. He left me to deal with the fallout alone. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want him to face consequences for what he did. To the company. To me. To you. And what do you get out of it? Elise was quiet for a moment. Maybe it helps with the divorce proceedings. Shows that I was a sufferer too. That I was manipulated. There it was. Even now, even after everything, she was still calculating angles, still looking for ways to come out ahead. The prenup stands, Elise. No matter what Nathan did, you still cheated on me. You still planned to leave me. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. Sorry doesn't fix anything. I know that too. I stood up to leave, then paused. Send me the evidence about Nathan's other schemes. I'll make sure the appropriate authorities get it. And then we're done. Completely done. That afternoon, I called a meeting with Harold and the board's executive committee. I laid out everything. Nathan's embezzlement, the affair, Elise's involvement, Rebecca's evidence of a pattern of fraud going back years. Jesus Christ, Harold muttered when I finished. How do we miss this? Nathan was careful, and he had help covering his tracks. From Elise. Indirectly. She provided alibis, explanations for his absences, legitimacy for his expense claims. Board member Patricia Walsh leaned forward. What's our exposure here? Financially? We'll recover most of the stolen funds through insurance and asset forfeiture. Legally? We're clean as long as we cooperate with the investigation. And publicity-wise? That depends on how we handle it. We can be the sufferer of a sophisticated fraud scheme, or we could be the company that enabled a thief through poor oversight. Harold nodded grimly. What do you recommend? full cooperation with law enforcement, complete transparency with our clients and shareholders, and immediate implementation of new financial controls to prevent this from happening again. Agreed. What about Nathan? I've already contacted the FBI's white-collar crime division. They're very interested in Rebecca Steinberg's evidence. The meeting concluded with unanimous support for my recommendations. Within an hour, federal agents were on their way to interview me about Nathan's activities. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings with investigators, lawyers, and reporters. The story broke in the Chicago Tribune on Friday morning. Meridian Industries exposes multi-year embezzlement scheme. Nathan's photo was on the front page of the business section, along with details of his fraudulent activities and sudden disappearance. The article portrayed Meridian as the sufferer of a sophisticated criminal operation, and me as the vigilant CEO who'd uncovered the scheme. My phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, competitors offering sympathy, clients reassuring me of their continued business. I handled each call with professional composure, playing the role of the steady leader guiding his company through crisis. But privately, I felt something I hadn't expected. Satisfaction, not the petty pleasure of personal revenge, but the deeper satisfaction of seeing justice done. Nathan wasn't just facing professional consequences anymore. He was facing federal charges that could put him in prison for years. On Friday evening, I was working late in my office when Frank knocked on my door. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "FBI found Nathan in Miami. Arrested him at the airport trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands." Good. Gets better. They seized his bank accounts and found evidence of fraud at 2 other companies. Rebecca Steinberg's information was the key to everything. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. "What about Elise?" Radio silence. Word is she's moved back to Milwaukee to stay with her sister while the divorce goes through. Probably for the best. Frank sat down across from my desk. "So what now, boss? You've got your revenge, clean house, save the company. What's the encore?" I looked out at the Chicago skyline, lights twinkling in the gathering darkness. "Now we build something better. New controls, new culture, new standards. Make sure this never happens again." Sounds boring. Good. I've had enough excitement to last a lifetime. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The past 2 weeks had shown me something about myself I'd never recognized before, a capacity for ruthlessness that matched my ambition. I destroyed 2 careers into my marriage and sent a man to federal prison. And I'd enjoyed every minute of it. The thought should have troubled me more than it did. Instead, it felt like coming home to a part of myself I'd kept hidden for too long. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your victory. You played the game better than I expected." Nathan, reaching out from federal custody. I deleted the message without responding. Another text arrived a few minutes later, this one from Elise. "I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know that I'm proud of how you handled everything. You're going to be an incredible CEO." I stared at that message for a long time before deleting it too. At 9 p.m., I finally left the office and walked out into the Chicago night. The wind off Lake Michigan cut through my coat, but I didn't mind. I felt more alive than I had in years. I was the CEO of a major corporation. I was free of a cheating wife and her criminal lover. I had the respect of my peers and the fear of my enemies. I was exactly where I'd always wanted to be. As I walked toward my car, I thought about the past 2 weeks and the choices I'd made. I'd started as the sufferer, the cuckolded husband, the betrayed friend, the naive executive who'd trusted the wrong people. But I'd ended as something else entirely. Something harder, colder, more dangerous. I'd ended as a king. And kings, I'd learned, don't just rule their kingdoms. They destroy anyone who threatens them. The rain started falling as I reached my car, fat drops that splattered against the windshield like tears. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, watching the water streak down the glass, thinking about Nathan in his federal holding cell and Elise in her sister's spare bedroom. Then I started the engine and drove home through the storm, lightning flashing across the sky like nature's own fireworks celebrating my victory. I'd won. Completely, utterly, devastatingly won. And the best part was, I was just getting started.